Let's talk about something we see pretty much every single day, but maybe don't think about too deeply. The interview. It's been a core part of journalism for, over 130 years. But here's the question. Is it a noble search for truth, or is it something a lot darker? To really get into it, we have to rewind the clock a bit, to a time when some of the world's most brilliant minds saw an interview not as a simple chat, but as an actual crime.
And we're kicking things off with some seriously strong words from the author Rudyard Kipling. He didn't just dislike interviews. He called them immoral, a crime, an assault. That's a pretty shocking way to look at it, right? But it perfectly sets the stage for a debate that's still very much alive today.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with that big conflict, then we'll look at the case against interviews, and then, of course, the case for them. After that, we get to dive into a really fascinating case study with the incredible Umberto Eco to see how he handled it all, and we'll even uncover his secret to getting so much done.
Okay, so Section 1, art form or assault. This really is the heart of the matter. You know, depending on who you talk to, an interview is either this amazing way to communicate or it's a complete violation. There's not much in between.
You've basically got two camps. In one corner, you have people who believe the interview is a source of pure truth, maybe even an art form. But in the other corner, you have the so-called victims, public figures, celebrities, who feel like it's just this aggressive intrusion that chips away at who they are. So, which one is it? A source of truth or an act of theft?
Let's dig into that second point of view a little deeper. Why is it that so many really celebrated, creative people have such a visceral hatred for being interviewed?
The Nobel Prize winner V.S. Naipaul puts it in this really interesting way. He says people are literally wounded by interviews, that they lose a part of themselves. It's almost like that old belief that a photograph could steal your soul. The idea is that an interview somehow captures and diminishes the real you.
And Naipaul wasn't the only one who felt this way. Lewis Carroll, the guy who gave us Alice in Wonderland, apparently had a just horror of interviewers. He refused point blank to ever be interviewed. He hated the idea of being lionized, where the media blows you up into this huge spectacle and suddenly you're not in control of your own narrative anymore.
But this one, wow, this might be the most powerful description of all. The novelist Saul Bellow, and he actually did do interviews, said it felt like thumbprints on his windpipe. What a visceral, suffocating image. It gives you this real sense of physical violation, of being trapped.
And this really gets to the core of that fear, doesn't it? For the people who feel this way, the simple tools of the job, a pen, a notepad, they're not for communication. They're weapons, used to pin you down, define you, and maybe even hurt you.
But, of course, there's another side to this coin, so let's flip it over and look at the defense. If interviews are so awful, why are they such a massive part of our culture?
Well, according to the writer Dennis Bryan, it really comes down to necessity. In the world we live in, interviews are the main way we get to know the people who are shaping everything. Our culture, our politics, our ideas. Our most vivid impressions, that feeling of who these people are, comes directly from watching or reading an interview.
And that's the key, really. You can almost think of the interview as the central nervous system of how we get information today. Pretty much everything important, from breaking news to really deep insights, it all comes to us through this simple format, one person asking another person questions. And that gives the interviewer a ton of power and influence.
Now, to pull this whole debate out of the abstract, let's look at a real-world example, the absolutely brilliant scholar and novelist Umberto Eco. Now, this was a man who understood the power of words better than almost anyone, and watching how he dealt with interviewers is just fascinating.
This is how Eco described himself. It's perfect, isn't it? He didn't see himself as some superstar novelist. He was an academic first and foremost. This quote just beautifully sums up the two sides of his life. The serious scholar who, also happened to write massive best-selling novels in his spare time.
And the scale of what he did. Just look at this. It's staggering. He wrote more than 40 scholarly books, a huge academic output. And that's compared to just 5 novels. But it was one of those novels, The Name of the Rose, that sold over 10 million copies and turned him into a global celebrity. So the question is, how did one guy do all of that? And that leads us to the last and maybe the most interesting part of this whole story, Eco's secret. When an interviewer finally asked him how on earth he managed to be so productive, he revealed this completely unique way of looking at time.
The key word here is interstices.
That's what Eco called the empty spaces. You know, those little gaps in our day that most of us just waste. He didn't see them as downtime. He saw them as opportunities.
He explained it with this fantastic example. He told the interviewer, okay, imagine you're coming to my apartment. While you're in the elevator coming up, I'm here waiting for you. That is an interstice. I work in empty spaces. In the time it took your elevator to get from the first floor to the third, I've already written an article. It's just a brilliant way to think about finding time.
And what's really cool is how he unified all this work in his mind. He believed he was basically writing one giant book his entire life. It didn't matter if it was a super dense academic text, or a children's book about peace, or a thriller set in a medieval monastery. To him, it was all part of the same project, just exploring the philosophical ideas that he was interested in.
And he had so much respect for his readers. You know, a lot of publishers back then thought people just wanted easy trash. But Eco wasn't surprised at all that his really complex, serious novel was a huge hit. He was a firm believer that people are hungry for a challenge, even if they also like to kick back and watch something like Miami Vice after dinner.
So, here we are, full circle. That interview with Umberto Eco gave us these amazing insights into how his mind worked. It really was a window into his world. But it leaves us with that central question, doesn't it? For every piece of truth or fascinating insight we gain from an interview, what's the cost? Is a part of that person, like May Paul said, lost in the process? It's the paradox right at the heart of the interview, and it's definitely something to think about the next time you watch one.